Welcome to Module 8. This session focuses on how teachers can plan and implement differentiated instruction to meet the needs of all students. We'll explore the key principles, components, and decision-making processes behind effective differentiation. This is Education 207, Designing Effective Lessons for All Learners. We're in Module 8, and we are studying the lesson design critical component number 3, differentiated instruction. Let's go. These outcomes will guide your learning throughout this module. Keep them in mind as you work through the examples and reflection tasks ahead. So by the end of the module, you will be able to explain the principles of differentiated instruction, analyze how readiness, learning profiles, and background impact planning, evaluate differentiation across content, process, product, and environment, and apply differentiation strategies to real classroom scenarios. What is differentiated instruction? It's not individualized lesson planning for every student, but it is a proactive way of adjusting teaching to account for the wide range of learners in a classroom. It ensures that every student is supported and challenged appropriately. Flexible teaching that addresses differences in readiness, interest, and learning profiles is at the heart of differentiated instruction. Differentiated instruction is student-centered planning for meaningful access and engagement. It means that we have high expectations for all, and we've created varied paths to success. Differentiation is about responding to students' actual needs, cognitive, emotional, and cultural. It's not about giving less to struggling students or more to advanced learners, but rather making the learning process accessible, engaging, and effective for all. It ensures equity, not just equality. So, for example, let's say that you just had to take a midterm exam and it was a standardized test. Well, let's say that your teacher thought that she was going to be, helpful to the class by bringing sharpened pencils for everyone, for the exam. Well, that's wonderful and it's very, very thoughtful, but some students are going to come to class with nothing. So the pencil is helpful for them, but it doesn't provide a Scantron for them. Some students are already going to have a pencil, but they're not going to have a Scantron. So now they have two pencils, but no Scantron. It only helps the students who have only a Scantron. So that's a very simple way to explain differentiation, but I hope that it helps you understand that just doing the same thing for everyone is not always the best choice. Yes, there are times where that is necessary, and we want to make sure that everybody's receiving the same rigor and the same content. But there are times where we are going to have to adapt in order to ensure that gaps are filled or that interests are met or that perhaps we might even say like some things that could be barriers, like students who need physical accommodations or maybe some behavioral accommodations. So differentiation ensures equity, not just equality. It recognizes and values diverse experiences and strengths, and it promotes engagement and achievement. It aligns instruction with students' zones of proximal development. And zones of proximal development are those sweet spots where it's just challenging enough to stretch students, but it's not so challenging that they can't do it without some scaffolding and they can't do it at all. So the zone of proximal development provides scaffolding for them to meet challenging content without making it too challenging for them. So differentiation is how we meet these goals. These 4 areas provide insight into how students approach learning. Using this knowledge, teachers can make intentional instructional choices to better support each learner. So teachers differentiate based on readiness. What are the students' prior knowledge? What are their skill gaps? What pace do they learn best at? They differentiate based on interests. What motivates and excites the student? What is relevant to them and their world? Learning profiles, the preferences, strengths, and styles that our students are individualized learning profiles. And then background, language, culture, and lived experience of each student. These are the levers teachers can pull to adjust instruction. Differentiation doesn't have to be massive. Small shifts through the 4 components of differentiated instruction through one or more of these areas can yield significant benefits. So it can be differentiated by modifying content, what students are learning, the process, how they learn it, product, how they demonstrate understanding, and then the learning environment, where and with whom learning takes place. This slide gives some tangible ways teachers differentiate. Encourage students to think about what these examples might look like. I'd like to encourage you to think about how your students might interact and engage with these. What might it look like when your students are doing these in a real lesson? How could you adapt any of these in order to achieve high outcomes for all? So think about when we're thinking about examples of differentiated instruction for content, an example is maybe leveled reading text on the same topic. So for example, if you know that some of your students are not yet reading on level, it may be helpful to preview the lesson and what they're going to be learning about with something on their reading level. It helps create some of that prior knowledge that is going to be important when they get to the text that is on level. And that way they're a little bit more prepared for maybe the complex vocabulary or the concepts themselves. Process, the choice of graphic organizer or verbal discussion. So for example, how students learn is very different. Some students may want to talk things out with a partner, and another student may prefer to do something independently using a graphic organizer, or even with a partner in a graphic organizer. Less discussion and more hands-on. So notice that the process varies it based on their learning profiles. The product, students can choose between a poster, an essay, or a skit. So we would want to keep the criteria, the same. How many pieces of evidence do they need to show? Do they need to state a clear claim? What sort of techniques or elements need to be included? But then we're giving them some choices in how they want to demonstrate their learning. And then the learning environment, flexible seating or small group work. So this can be something where we are grouping them together. We're assigning some groups based on what we know their needs are, and then also using some flexible seating choices. For example, if they're doing maybe some read aloud with a partner, having some different reading spaces around the room so that they can have some choice in their environment, letting them read on a couch versus a beanbag. Maybe some of them might want to stand up, and read. So those are just some examples of how we can differentiate. So what I'd like for you to do now is jot down your thoughts, or you could even discuss this if you're in the face-to-face setting. You could discuss this in small groups, but take a little bit of time, pause this part of the slide, and jot down your thoughts. I encourage you to consider more than one component and to justify your choices based on student needs. So here's our scenario for our application practice. You're teaching a fifth grade social studies lesson on U.S. regions. Your class includes 2 English learners with strong visual skills, 1 student with dyslexia, and 1 student reading above grade level. Which content, process, product, or environment would you differentiate? How? Why? So let's pause this, and I'd like for you to take a few moments to jot down your ideas and your justifications for them. Use the materials in this module, and you can even use the raw slide deck to go back and look at some of the examples if you need to. So now let's look at the exemplar response. This is just one example of how a teacher might differentiate for this class. Notice how each strategy aligns with specific student needs. The visual support benefits EL students. Audio tools reduce reading barriers for the student with dyslexia. And choice in the product allows all students to demonstrate understanding in ways that suit their strengths. Collaboration and flexible grouping foster a more inclusive environment. These small shifts create a more responsive and equitable classroom experience. And let's be honest, it's just more interesting. Effective differentiation starts with strong learning goals and a deep understanding of your students. It's a mindset and a practice, one that develops with intention and reflection. So, what makes differentiation effective? It's driven by assessment and observation. Remember, differentiation is responsive to students' needs, responsive to students' backgrounds, interests, and readiness. It's embedded in daily planning, not added on, and it's grounded in clear learning objectives. So let's summarize the key elements of differentiated instruction. First, differentiation isn't just about modifying a lesson randomly. It's a structured approach that involves adapting 4 specific components: content, what students learn; process, how they learn it; product, how they demonstrate learning; and learning environment, where and with whom learning happens. To differentiate effectively, teachers must consider 3 student factors: readiness, which refers to students' current skill or understanding; learning profile, which includes learning style, intelligence preferences, and cultural influences; and of course, background. What is their language acquisition skill? What are their experience? What prior educational knowledge are they bringing? The ultimate goal is to create lessons that are both rigorous and accessible. Differentiation ensures all students are appropriately challenged and engaged, not just those in the middle of the readiness spectrum. So our assignment this week is to complete the note catcher to enhance your understanding of differentiation. See Canvas and your instructor's announcements for all other materials and assignments. Please let us know if you have any questions, and have a wonderful week.